Hey, welcome here. Today we will learn about the history of ice cream. Let's start.
Ice cream feels like something that was always meant to exist. Most of us never ask how ice cream began. We only notice it when it melts too quickly, or when it reminds us of summer, childhood, or a quiet moment of happiness. But ice cream was not invented the way we imagine inventions today. There was no factory, no clear recipe, no moment where someone proudly announced, "This is ice cream." In fact, for most of history, ice cream didn't exist at all. For thousands of years, cold was something humans tried to escape. Winter meant hunger. Ice meant danger. Snow was beautiful, but it was also a threat. People covered themselves with animal skins, built fires, and dreamed of warmth. The idea of eating something frozen would have sounded strange, even foolish. And yet, long before freezers and refrigerators, humans were already experimenting with cold. Not because they wanted dessert, but because they were curious. In ancient China, more than 2,000 years ago, people discovered that snow and ice could be used to cool drinks. They mixed snow with fruit juices, honey, and milk. These mixtures were not ice cream as we know it, but they were something new, cold, sweet, and refreshing. It wasn't luxury. It was curiosity. People noticed how temperature changed taste. Cold made sweetness sharper. It slowed melting. It preserved flavors for longer. These early frozen treats were enjoyed mostly by royalty, because storing ice was difficult and expensive. Ice had to be collected from mountains or frozen lakes and stored underground. Cold became a symbol of power. In ancient Persia, engineers built special underground structures called yakhals. These buildings used wind, shade, and thick walls to keep ice frozen even during hot summers. Inside, people stored ice brought from nearby mountains. With it, they made chilled desserts using rose water, fruits, and fine threads of starch. Again, this wasn't ice cream. But it was moving closer. What's interesting is that no one was trying to invent a dessert. These cultures were solving practical problems, cooling drinks, preserving food, surviving heat. Pleasure came later, almost by accident. As trade routes expanded, ideas traveled with them. When the Arab world became a center of science and culture, new techniques appeared. Sugar became more refined. Ice storage improved. Recipes became more deliberate. Frozen milk-based desserts began to take shape, especially in wealthy households. Cold was no longer just useful. It was enjoyable. By the time Marco Polo traveled through Asia in the 13th century, he encountered frozen desserts unlike anything found in Europe. According to popular stories, he brought these ideas back with him. Historians debate how much of this is true, but what matters is the result. Europe slowly became curious about frozen sweets. At first, Europeans copied what they could. Snow was mixed with fruit. Ice was flavored with sugar and herbs. Milk was added cautiously, because it spoiled easily. There was still no recipe for ice cream. Only experiments. In royal courts, chefs competed to impress kings and queens with novelty. Cold desserts became a way to display wealth, creativity, and control over nature itself. To serve something frozen in summer meant you had access to ice, storage, and skilled labor. It meant power. In Italy, during the Renaissance, experimentation intensified. Italian cooks refined textures, balanced sweetness, and learned how to prevent mixtures from freezing solid. They didn't know the science of fat crystals or air bubbles, but they observed carefully. When stirred slowly, frozen mixtures became smoother. When rushed, they became hard and unpleasant. These small observations mattered. Still, ice cream was not yet ice cream. It had no fixed form, no agreed definition. It existed as a series of accidents, improvements, and quiet discoveries passed from kitchen to kitchen. The most important thing to understand is this: ice cream was not created because humans needed it. It appeared because humans were curious enough to keep experimenting with something as difficult and unreliable as cold. Cold was unpredictable. Ice melted. Milk spoiled. Sugar was expensive. And yet people kept trying. Not because they knew where it would lead, but because curiosity has always pushed humans forward, even when there is no clear reward. By the end of this period, frozen desserts were still rare, fragile, and imperfect. But the foundation had been laid. Ice cream was waiting, not to be invented, but to be discovered. By the time frozen desserts began appearing in Europe, they were still unreliable. Ice melted quickly. Milk spoiled easily. Sugar was costly. Nothing about cold could be trusted. That unreliability is what made frozen desserts special. In everyday kitchens, failure was expensive. Food was precious. Time mattered. A mistake meant hunger. But in royal courts, the rules were different. Waste was acceptable. Experiments could continue. Failure was tolerated, even expected, as long as the result impressed. This is where ice cream's story changed direction. Kings and queens did not need frozen desserts. They wanted them. Cold foods, served in summer, were proof of control. They showed that wealth could bend nature, even briefly. Ice meant access to mountains, storage, labor, and knowledge. It meant power. Royal kitchens became laboratories. Ice was stored in deep cellars. Snow was packed tightly underground. Servants worked quickly, carrying frozen blocks wrapped in cloth. Time was always against them. Cooks experimented carefully. They learned that stirring mattered. That sugar lowered freezing points. That fat changed texture. They didn't understand the science. They understood results. Smoothness became desirable. Graininess became failure. Italy played a quiet but important role during this period. Italian cooks refined frozen mixtures more patiently than others. They slowed the process. They observed textures. They adjusted ratios by instinct rather than formula. Still, nothing was stable. Every success depended on conditions that could not be repeated easily. Weather mattered. Ice quality mattered. Speed mattered. One warm day could undo weeks of preparation. Frozen desserts remained rare, exclusive, and temporary. When Catherine de' Medici married into the French royal family in the 16th century, she brought Italian culinary traditions with her. Among them were chilled desserts that fascinated the French court. Again, historians debate details, but the pattern is clear: frozen sweets spread through influence, not invention. France embraced refinement. Presentation mattered. Flavor balance mattered. The idea of pleasure slowly overtook practicality. By the 17th century, frozen milk-based desserts appeared more frequently in elite households. They were served at banquets, admired briefly, and consumed quickly before melting destroyed them. Cold dictated behavior. What's important is that ice cream was still not a product. It was an event. Something fleeting. Something to be experienced once, not repeated reliably. Outside royal circles, most people never tasted it. Ice houses existed, but maintaining them required resources few possessed. The techniques that worked in palaces could not survive ordinary life. Ice cream remained fragile, dependent on privilege. And yet knowledge accumulated quietly. Each attempt taught something. Each failure revealed a small truth. Stirring mattered. Temperature mattered. Timing mattered. These lessons stayed in kitchens, passed between cooks, refined slowly. No one stepped back and designed ice cream. It grew through repetition. By the late 17th century, something subtle had shifted. Frozen desserts were no longer shocking. They were expected at elite gatherings. They had become part of culture, still unstable, still rare, but familiar. That familiarity mattered. Because once something becomes familiar, people begin asking a different question. Not can this be done, but can this be done better? The answer would not come from palaces. It would come from places where practicality finally mattered. When ice cream began to leave royal kitchens, it faced its greatest challenge: ordinary life. Outside palaces, ice was not abundant. Labor was limited. Mistakes were costly. Frozen desserts had to survive real conditions: transport, time, heat, and most attempts failed. In the 18th century, ice cream appeared in public spaces for the first time. Cafes and street vendors experimented with frozen treats. They relied on natural ice, often harvested in winter and stored underground. Every serving was a race against melting. Texture remained unpredictable. One batch could be smooth, the next icy. Recipes varied because ingredients varied. Milk quality changed daily. Sugar supply fluctuated. Nothing was standardized. But repetition did something important. It exposed patterns. Cooks noticed that churning slowly introduced air. That fat softened freezing. That salt mixed with ice lowered temperature. These discoveries were practical, not scientific. Ice cream improved not through understanding, but through survival. In 1843, an American woman named Nancy Johnson patented a hand-cranked ice cream freezer. It was a simple device. A container held the mixture. Ice and salt surrounded it. Turning a handle churned the contents evenly. This did not invent ice cream. It made it repeatable. For the first time, ordinary households could produce consistent frozen desserts. The process became less fragile, less dependent on luck. Still, ice remained a limitation. Everything changed when artificial refrigeration appeared in the late 19th century. Cold was no longer seasonal. Ice no longer needed mountains or lakes. Temperature could be controlled. The enemy became manageable. Ice cream production moved from kitchens to factories. Recipes stabilized. Quality improved. Distribution expanded. Ice cream became affordable, predictable, and abundant. Something was gained. Something was lost. Today, ice cream feels ordinary. It fills supermarket freezers. It appears at birthdays, holidays, and quiet evenings. Ice cream exists because humans kept trying, even when the result melted away.